Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick Lepri of Stokastic.com, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 14 top 8 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends based upon optimal percentage. At number 8 is the least optimal of the group, and at number 1, you guessed it, the most optimal out of those groups. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, smack it up like it owes you some money. Make sure you hit the like on today's video as well. It helps us out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. We're going to be talking about our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 14, DraftKings Contenders. We begin with the quarterback position at number 8 with Daniel Jones of the Giants going up against the Eagles at home, 5,400. At 7, we have Geno Smith of Seattle going up against the Carolina Panthers in Seattle, 6,200. At 6, we have Jalen Hurts of the Eagles going up against the Giants in New York, 8,100. And at number 5, where the true breakdown begins, we have Mr. You Like That, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit, 6,100 on DraftKings on the week. Currently projected using our stochastic projections from 19.4 fantasy points. They are 8th in implied point total with 25, and they are 2-point dogs, shockingly, to the Detroit Lions. Kirk Cousins has an 8.2 optimal percentage with a 6.7 boom percentage. This is one of the few matchups on the week that reeks of points. This game screams being a tit-for-tat, rock'em sock'em robots-esque game where the two teams are just punching each other. Not a lot of defense. The Detroit Lions have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, so I like Kirk Cousins a ton this week, especially at his price tag of 6,100. At number 4, we have Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cincinnati, $7,000, projected for 21.4 fantasy points, 6th in implied point total with 26, 5.5 point favorites, 8.5 optimal percentage, and a 6.1 boom percentage. Now, Joe Burrow has yet to, in his NFL career, defeat the Cleveland Browns, which is very funny that Joe Burrow struggles with the Cleveland Browns. Meanwhile, he absolutely dismantles the Kansas City Chiefs, which is exactly what we saw last week. I am a little bit worried about this game because the Browns defense really did come alive up against the Texans, but then again, the Texans are so dog shit that most defenses look great against them. Honestly, I think Joe Burrow is going to have a decent game, but it's $7,000, and with the matchup being a little weird up against the Browns, I'm not too sure how much Joe Burrow I'm going to have this week. At number 3, we have Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Buffalo. It has been reported by the weather people that this game might have a little bit of snow in it. It's going to be a little bit cold because some of that make your nipple hard weather. $8,300 on DraftKings for Josh Allen, projected for 23.9 fantasy points, 5th in implied point total with 26.5, favored by 10 points, 9.4 optimal percentage with a 6.6 boom percentage. I think a lot of people are going to be scared of Josh Allen this week for 2 reasons. One being the price tag is $8,300, and the other being the fact that the Jets have one of the best, if not the best, defense in all of the National Football League. Now, we saw last week that the Vikings were able to move the ball effectively up against the Jets, and this game with Mike White under center especially does have the upside to be one of those tit-for-tat, high-scoring affairs. If a lot of people get away from Josh Allen because the matchup, people are worried about Sauce Gardner, then I think I'm going to have a decent amount of Josh Allen. But if it seems like a lot of people are thinking like me, and they're thinking, you know what, people will be scared of Josh Allen, so I'm going to play Josh Allen, I'm probably going to stay clear away. At number 2, we have probably my favorite quarterback to be playing on the week. Don't think this much of a hot take, though. Jared Goff of the Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Detroit. Just $5,600, projected for 19.3 fantasy points, 3rd in implied point total with 27, favored by 2 points, 9.4 optimal percentage with a 9.8 boom percentage. Like I talked about earlier on when we were going in depth with Kirk Cousins, I talked about how this game reeks of points. I really do expect this to be a high-scoring game. Jared Goff has looked phenomenal over the last couple of games, and we have seen that big game upside out of Jared Goff. The Vikings have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, so do the Lions, so this really does have the upside to be a really high-scoring one. I'm a huge fan of Jared Goff. This week, at number 1, we have a quarterback that I am somewhat worried about, and that is Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Houston Texans at home in Jerry's World. This week, 6,500, projected for 20.6 fantasy points. First and implied point total with 30.75, favored by 17.5 points, 10.8 optimal percentage with a 9.3 boom percentage. Now, the reason why I'm worried about Dak Prescott has everything to do with the matchup. Now, I know on paper this is a wet dream matchup. The Houston Texans defense is absolutely atrocious. The problem is that we might see what happened with the Dolphins against the Texans happen with the Dallas Cowboys, meaning when the Dolphins played against the Texans, they were beating down on the Texans so bad that they benched Tua and all of the main players early on in the second half. If the Dallas Cowboys are up big entering the second half, are they really going to risk injury with Dak Prescott, or are they just going to play Cooper Rush? Now, obviously, in the first half of the game, Dak Prescott might lay the hammer down. He might lay a pipe for that ass like he's a plumber and have a huge game because the Texans defense is piss poor, but he also might throw one touchdown. Zeke or Tony Pollard score another 2 touchdowns combined, and then in the second half, since the Texans haven't scored, they bench Dak Prescott, and then you are shit out of luck. Next up, we move to the running back position, beginning at number 8 with Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook going up against the Lions in Detroit. 7,300 at 7. We have CMC, Christian McCaffrey of the Niners going up against the Bucks. 8,500 up against a stout Bucks defense. At 6, we have Tony Pollard of the Cowboys going up against the Texans. 6,700. At number 5, we have Travis Etienne Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. 6,400, projected for 15.5 fantasy points, 19th in implied point total, tied with the New York Football Giants with 18.75, 3.5 point dogs, 13.7 optimal percentage with a 6.8 boom percentage. Now, Travis Etienne has been a bit of a dud over the last 2 games. It does really appear that Trevor Lawrence is going to be under center yet again for the Jacksonville Jaguars, hopefully a little bit more healthy than he was in the second half of that game, and I think that really does increase the upside of Etienne if Trevor Lawrence is healthy. I don't really expect this one to be a super high-scoring affair, which does scare me a little bit off of Travis Etienne, but again, he does have immense receiving upside as well. He's a pretty decent play. This week, at number 4, we have DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Detroit. 5,800, projected for 14.7 fantasy points, third in implied point total with 27, favored by 2 points, 15.8 optimal percentage, and an 8.5 boom percentage. I'm just going to keep it 100 with you guys at 5,800. Everyone and their fucking mother is going to be playing DeAndre Swift. And sometimes with chalk, you want to stay away, and sometimes with chalk, you want to eat it, like how Jameis Winston eats a W, and I think this is one of the scenarios where I'm going to devour the fucking chalk like it's Thanksgiving dinner. I fully expect DeAndre Swift to go nuclear in this game. The only worry, and the biggest problem with the Lions is once they're knocking on the door, knock, 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 it's almost time to be a touchdown. Jamal with 2 A's Williams magically flies into the game like Randy Orton and RKO's DeAndre Swift and then runs into the end zone. Pretty frustrating, but they seem to unleash Swift last week, and up against the Minnesota Vikings defense, this could be a big spot for Swift. At number 3, we have Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Houston Texans at home in Dallas. 6,100, projected for 15 fantasy points, first implied point total with 30.75. They're favored by 17.5 points, which is hilarious. Like, anytime any of the spreads are over 14 points, it's like, wow, that just shows how dog shit the Texans are. 17.8 optimal percentage and an 8.3 boom percentage. Ezekiel Elliott is like the Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions, because Ezekiel Elliott is nowhere near as skilled as Tony Pollard, but Jerry Jones, as well as their head coach, McCarthy, just want Zeke to get the ball. So Zeke continues to get carries, and Zeke might rush for 3 touchdowns, despite the fact that Tony Pollard is a much better player than him. It's incredibly frustrating. Obviously, both of those running backs are incredibly enticing in a cupcake matchup against the Texans. At number 2, we have Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Browns. Obviously, this take is assuming that Joe Mixon ends up playing, priced at 6,900 this week. But before we go on in depth into Joe Mixon and the rest of the players of today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at BetMGM. And we have a great offer for you. All you gotta do is click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment, and you will get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a $1,000 risk-free bet when you sign up. Okay? So all you have to do is go ahead and make a BetMGM sportsbook account, deposit at least $10, make your first paid bet, And then once your bet settles, then you will receive an email on how to redeem your Stokastic subscription. So make sure you guys check that out. The tools over on Stokastic Platinum helped me take down a DraftKings tournament last week in the NFL. They're very helpful. I use them all of the time. It's how I build all my lineups. It's how all the information from this video is right next to me. All of that stuff comes from our tools, so make sure you guys do check that out. And plus, a risk-free bet of up to $1,000 is pretty solid as well. So back on into Joe Mixon. We haven't seen him in a couple of weeks as Samaje Perine has been the back for the team while Joe Mixon was gone. But prior to Joe Mixon being gone, the man scored 5 fucking touchdowns in one game, 19.3 optimal percentage, 11.4 boom percentage. But I'm still a little bit pessimistic when it comes to the Bengals because, again, history tells us that the Browns are really good up against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I'm surprised he's only 6,900, to be honest with you, with how big the upside is with Joseph Mixon. At number 1, we have Derrick Henry of the Atlanta Dons going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Tennessee, 7,900. If we know anything about Derrick Henry, is that this man just enjoys devouring, destroying a defense of a team that is in the same division as him. Year in and year out, this guy just runs train on his division rivals, especially the Jaguars, who's playing this week. They have yet to play this season. They play this week, and then I believe the last week of the season. Projected for 21.3 fantasy points, 13th in implied point total with 22.25, 3.5 point favorites, 25.8 optimal percentage, and a 16.2 boom percentage. Last week, up against the Philadelphia Eagles, Derrick Henry shit the bed big time, but that's really because the game script went away from Derrick Henry because they were down so big they had to throw the ball a ton. This is a matchup where things should be close, where they're going to be able to run the ball a bunch. Derrick Henry does have some sneaky receiving upside. I'm not saying he's Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara by any means, DeAndre Swift, but he does have at least maybe 2 targets for 2 receptions and 20 yards in him, which is just those extra brownie points, those bonus points that you look for. So I think Derrick Henry, again, anytime he plays the Jaguars, the best bet is to assume that he is going to go absolutely fucking nuclear. Now we move to the wide receiver position, beginning at number 8 with Adam Thielen of the Vikings going up against the Lions in Detroit, 4,900. Thielen's actually pretty interesting because every single game he gets a bunch of targets, but he just really hasn't turned it into much success. 7, we got DJ Moore of the Panthers going up against the Seattle Seahawks, 5,500. Kendall Hinton at number 6 of the Broncos going up against the Chiefs, 3,400. At number 5, we have Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cincinnati, 7,900. Projected for 17.9 fantasy points, 13.9 optimal percentage, 6th in implied point total with 26, 5.5 point favorites, and 10 boom percentage. Again, while I am nervous about this matchup, incredibly nervous, I'm shivering me timbers, I will tell you that I think if I was playing a bunch of lineups, like one of them, multiple of them are going to be Cincinnati lineups because, again, while I think that it is entirely possible that maybe the Browns just have the recipe for success to defend the Bengals, the last time these two teams played, Jamar Chase wasn't even there, and Jamar Chase looked like he had 0 rust last week up against the Chiefs coming off that injury. He looked really good. Obviously didn't have a big fantasy day, but he did look like the same Jamar Chase that we're used to, so he's in a pretty interesting spot this week. At number 4, we have Laviska Shenault Jr. of the Carolina Panthers going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, 3,300. Projected for 11 fantasy points, 17th in implied point total with 20.25, 3.5 point dogs, woof woof, 17.5 optimal percentage, and a 10.1 boom percentage. Now, Laviska Shenault is one of those guys that you are taking the step back shot from 3, and this is not just a normal 3-pointer. This is a half-court shot from not just one half-court. You're at the Y, you're like 3 courts away. Hook shot Kareem Abdul-Jabbar across, and it somehow goes in, right? If Laviska Shenault hits. Now, DJ Moore is active. Mono man Sam Darnold will be under center. The game against Seattle, I mean, the Seattle defense is pretty underrated, but I'm not saying they're one of the best defenses in the NFL. Anytime, though, that our Stokastic projections have someone who is only like $3,300 projected to be a top 5 optimal play, I'm probably going to play him. Last week, the projections like Nico Collins. Nico Collins was in a lot of my lineups. I won a lot of money last week, so I'm just going to believe in the magic that goes on behind the scenes. 17th in implied point total, 20.25, 3.5 point dog, 17.5 optimal percentage, and a 10 0.1 boom percentage up against Seattle. At number 3, we have Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Lions in Detroit. $9,000 projected for 22 fantasy points, 8th in implied point total. With 25, they are 2-point dogs, 18 optimal percentage, 15.3 boom percentage. So the biggest issue with Justin Jefferson and trying to make his way on into your lineup this week is the price tag. $9,000 is very expensive. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is so good that I get why he's $9,000, right? Not saying DK priced him wrong. I'm just saying that price tag is pretty hefty. But if you're going for the Viking stack and you want to go balls deep in there, makes sense to go with Justin Jefferson, or maybe as the expensive run back if you're looking to go cheap and get Laviska and Kendall Hinton into your lineup as well. At number 2, we have CD Lamb, the Lamster of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Houston Texans at home in Dallas. 7,500 projected for 19.6 fantasy points, first implied point total with 30.75, favored by 17.5 points, 21.2 optimal percentage, 16.8 boom percentage. My worries with the Dallas Cowboys continue with CeeDee Lamb, because again, there's a chance that the team just benches him going into the second half, but there's also a chance that this guy takes a shit directly on the chest of the Houston Texans and, you know, in the first half scores 2 touchdowns. He's out of there. Still had a great game. So at the price tag, he looks pretty solid. At number 1, we have my guy, my man, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions going up against the Vikings. 7,800 back-to-back heater games for Detroit Lions wide receiver St. Brown. 21.1 fantasy points, 3rd in implied point total of 27. Favored by 2 fantasy points, 23.8 optimal percentage, 19.2 boom percentage. Even if the team decides to fucking unleash Jameson Williams in this game, which I'm not too sure they will. Jameson Williams has been playing, but you get what I mean. Like, actually give him a fair snap share. I still think Amon-Ra St. Brown could feast this garbage tier fucking Minnesota Vikings defense. So I'm a really big fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's probably going to be my highest owned wide receiver this week, but most weeks he's my highest owned wide receiver. I love my guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now to the tight end position, the final position of today's video. At number 8, we have Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. 6,500 Fant of the Seahawks going up against the Panthers. 3,100 Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers going up against the Baltimore Ravens. 4,500. At number 5, we've got David Njoku of the Browns going up against the Bengals. 3,900 in Cincinnati. Important to note that David Njoku is banged up and may or may not play in this game. I'm not telling you he's guaranteed to play. Make sure you check again on Sunday. Make sure you use our tools. And if you don't end up doing the BetMGM offer, which you obviously should, you can actually get our projections for 3 days for free. Just clicking on the link in the video description. All of those tools for free for 3 days. Just click on the link in the video description. David Njoku projected for 9.6 fantasy points, 15th in applied point total with 20.5, 5.5 point underdogs, 10.6 optimal percentage, 8.8 boom percentage. Again, it's all about if he's able to stay healthy or not. Deshaun Watson obviously put on a disaster class of a game last week up against the Houston Texans. That should have been an easy game where he tiptoed his way through and absolutely annihilated them. That ended up not happening, but I do think he's in for a bounce back here up against the Bengals. I think David Njoku's in a really good spot if that is the case. At number 4, we have Dalton Schultz of the Cowboys going up against the Texans. I've read off their implied point total so much, we're skipping it this time. Up against the Texans, 4,400. Projected for 10.5 fantasy points, 12.8 optimal percentage, 10.2 boom percentage. As you can tell, every single player that is noteworthy on the Dallas Cowboys, we really like this week. Shocker, he's playing up against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Dalton Schultz is one of the few tight ends that is close, in my opinion, to the upper echelon. A guy like Kelsey, a guy like Kittle, a guy like Andrews who could put your team on his back and score 3 touchdowns. I think Schultz has that in him. Now, is he in the same tier, the same echelon? No, but he's close. He's like knocking on the door of becoming that good. I do love the matchup. Obviously, again, it's just really a worry on how long are the starters going to be in for Dallas, and are they really going to just smack down the Houston Texans? Are they really going to beat them 42-0? Because if they don't, then obviously some of these guys won't end up being the best. At number 3, we move to Mr. Travis Kelce, 7,600, up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. Not a good game against the Chiefs last week. Was not worth the money that I advocated that you paid up for him. Projected for 17.3 fantasy points, 4th in applied point total, 26.75, 9.5 point favorite, 12.9 optimal percentage, 12.9 boom percentage. My biggest worry about Travis Kelce is that this game becomes a snooze fest. Every single game that the Denver Broncos play in is boring as fuck. Nothing happens. The defense plays good. Russell Wilson is so bad that they're not able to do anything. And bada bing, bada boom, the game's over. And somehow there's like 27 points scored in the game, right? Now, the Chiefs are so good that that shouldn't happen, but it's still in the back of my mind. At number 2, we have Mr. TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Detroit Lions. Revenge game in Detroit, 5,100 Buckaroos, projected for 12.7 fantasy points, 8th in implied point total with 25, 2-point dogs, 14.9 optimal percentage with an 11.4 boom percentage. I am one of the biggest advocates of the revenge game factor. I love nothing more than a good old-fashioned revenge game. Now, I'm not sure what type of revenge TJ Hawkinson really needs to enact, because he went from the Lions to the Vikings, so congratulations to him, right? It's not like he went to some other team. They cast him away, like that movie with Wilson in it, and boom, he's stuck on some garbage tier team, right? He's on the Vikings, one of the best teams perceived in the NFL, though they are 2-point dogs to the Lions. Very interesting by the books. TJ Hawkinson here, this could be a nuclear game. 5,100 bucks. Me like you a lot. I'm going to have a lot of TJ Hawkinson. And at number 1, my boy Greg Dulcich of the Broncos going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. 3,400. Greg Dulcich unleashed a can of whoop-ass last week for the Broncos, despite, again, Russell Wilson being awful. Projected for 9.9 fantasy points, 22nd implied point total, tied with the Ravens, 17.25, 9.5-point dogs, 15.5 optimal percentage, 12 boom percentage. The matchup against the Chiefs is actually not that bad. Like, the Chiefs' defense really isn't all that good. But again, you know, even the worst defense ever created in the NFL is going to make Russell Wilson look like the worst quarterback in the NFL, because Russell Wilson is legitimately awful. Bottom of the barrel garbage. But Dulcich at 3,400? I think I'm going to have a lot of him as well. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Make sure you guys check out our deal with BetMGM, linked in the video description. You will get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a $1,000 risk-free bet. All you got to do is sign up using the link in the video description. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.